The alarm systems across Galactic Council Station began screaming at the same moment. Sensor operators from 12 different species stared at their displays, certain their equipment had malfunctioned. The signature appearing on their screens was impossible. It had been dead for 87 years. Council Speaker Thelnos rose from his seat in the Grand Chamber, his scaled hands gripping the podium. His species, the Viridians, had survived for 3,000 years by trusting their instruments. Right now, those instruments were telling him something that made his blood run cold with a mixture of hope and dread. "Confirm the identification," he said quietly. His voice carried through the chamber despite its softness. That was the Viridian way. True authority never needed to shout. A young Catharian technician's claws clicked rapidly across her console. "Confirmed, Speaker. Hull signature matches archives. Quantum resonance matches. Biomarker patterns match. It is the UHNS Eternal Vigil." The chamber erupted. Ambassadors from worlds scattered across 3 spiral arms began shouting questions. Some demanded answers. Others whispered prayers in languages so old that translation matrices struggled to process them. Thelnos let them react. They had earned this moment of shock. The Eternal Vigil was humanity's greatest warship, built during the desperate years when the Harbinger swarm consumed everything in its path. The ship was 5 kilometers of weapons, shields, and crew quarters that housed 12,000 souls. It carried enough firepower to crack a moon and enough fighters to darken a sun. But weapons were not what made it legendary. 87 years ago, the Harbingers pushed toward the Coreward systems. 4 billion lives from 7 different species lived in those colonies. They were farmers, teachers, children learning to read, elders telling stories. They were defenseless. The evacuation fleets were still 2 days away when the Harbinger mothership entered the system. Captain Lee Hyun-woo had made his choice in seconds. The Eternal Vigil positioned itself between the mothership and the colonies. It fought alone for 48 hours. The ship's shields collapsed. Its hull cracked. Its guns melted from overuse. But it held the line. The evacuation fleets arrived and saved 4 billion people. The Eternal Vigil vanished into the Void Nebula, pursued by Harbinger forces. No one expected survivors. The nebula's radiation would kill anything that entered. If the Harbingers didn't finish the job first, the nebula would. Humanity declared the site sacred. Salvage was forbidden. Monuments were built on every human world. But the other species built them too. The Viridians carved Captain Lee's name into their Hall of Heroes, alongside their own greatest leaders. The Catharians sang songs about the human ship that bought time with blood. 7 species taught their children about the sacrifice. Now the ghost ship had returned. Captain Park Ji-woo received the emergency transmission while his fleet conducted routine patrol near the nebula's edge. He read the message 3 times before he believed it. Then he ordered his ships to intercept course immediately. Park was 43 years old and had commanded recovery operations for 15 years. He had pulled crew from shattered vessels, retrieved black boxes from debris fields, and brought closure to thousands of families. But this was different. This was the Eternal Vigil. This was legend made real. His communication officer looked pale. "Sir, we are receiving Council priority messages. All member species are requesting updates. The Viridians are deploying their home fleet. The Catharians are sending their merchant marine. Everyone wants to be here." Park nodded slowly. "Let them come. The vigil belonged to humanity, but it died for all of us. They have earned the right to witness this." On Council Station, Ambassador Kwon Min-seo stood before the viewing screen, watching the dark shape drift through space. She was 60 years old and had spent her entire career in diplomatic service. She had negotiated trade agreements, resolved border disputes, and built bridges between species that barely trusted each other. But she had never prepared for this. Her grandfather had served on the Eternal Vigil, Engineer 3rd Class Kwon Dae-jung, assigned to reactor maintenance. She grew up with stories about him, told by a grandmother who never stopped mourning. Every year on the anniversary, her family would light candles and sing old songs. They had a picture of him in his uniform, smiling at the camera, so young and confident. Now his ship was coming home. The eternal vigil drifted closer, and the visual feeds grew clearer. The supercarrier was massive, even by current standards, but it was the damage that made observers fall silent. The hull was scarred by energy weapons. Entire sections were melted or torn away. Debris from Harbinger ships was still embedded in the armor. This vessel had fought until it had nothing left to give. Thelnos activated the station-wide broadcast system. People of the Galactic Council, we witness an event unprecedented in our history. The eternal vigil returns to us across nearly 9 decades. We do not know what we will find aboard that vessel. We do not know why it emerges now, but we know what it represents. It represents sacrifice without hesitation. It represents duty without question. It represents the moment when humanity taught us all what it means to protect the helpless. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Humanity lost 12,000 souls to save 4 billion of ours. Let us ensure we are worthy of that gift. Captain Park's fleet reached the eternal vigil 6 hours later. The supercarrier was dark and cold, its reactors barely registering on scanners. But deep within the vessel, something was still active. A faint power signature pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat. Park assembled his boarding team personally. Lieutenant Choi Seo-yeon, his best engineer. Dr. Han Jae-sung, a xenoarchaeologist requested by 3 different council species to document everything they found. 2 medical officers. 4 security specialists. All volunteers. All aware they were about to walk through a place where heroes died. As the boarding craft approached the main hangar bay, Park thought about his own grandfather, who had fought in the ground campaigns during the Harbinger War. The old man had told him once, "We won because humans refused to abandon anyone. We lost thousands, saving hundreds. Some species thought we were fools. Then they realized we would do the same for them. That changed everything." The hangar bay doors were open, frozen in position from 87 years ago. The boarding craft slid through and settled onto the deck. Park stood at the airlock, his hand on the release mechanism. "Whatever we find in there," he said to his team, "we treat it with respect. These people bought the galaxy's future. We owe them everything." He opened the door and stepped into history. The emergency lights flickered across the hangar bay in patterns that seemed almost alive. Red, amber, red again. The illumination painted shadows across 78 fighter craft still locked in their launch positions, frozen in time like insects in amber. Captain Park Ji-woo's boots echoed on the deck plating as he walked among them. Each fighter bore the scars of previous battles, patched hull sections, replaced components. Some were marked with kill tallies, small symbols indicating Harbinger vessels destroyed. Park stopped beside one fighter that had 16 marks painted on its nose. Beneath them, someone had written in careful Hangul, "For those who cannot fight for themselves." Lieutenant Choi Seo-yeon ran her scanner across the nearest bulkhead and frowned at the readings. "Sir, the hull integrity is actually better than expected. The nebula's radiation should have degraded the molecular bonds, but something protected the ship. Maybe the shields were kept active on minimal power." Dr. Han Jae-sung knelt beside what looked like a personal belonging. A small photograph sealed in protective plastic, dropped and forgotten in the chaos of that final battle. He carefully picked it up, noting its location in his documentation system. The photo showed a young woman holding a child, both smiling at the camera. On the back, someone had written, "Wait for me." "Everything in this place tells a story," Han said quietly. "We must record it all." The boarding team moved deeper into the ship, following the central corridor toward the command section. The Eternal Vigil was designed like a small city, with residential areas, medical facilities, recreation spaces, and the massive command center that coordinated the ship's operations. Signs on the walls pointed toward different sections, some in Korean, others in the universal pictographs used by the Galactic Council. They passed through crew quarters where personal items remained exactly as their owners had left them. Bunks made with military precision, books left open on small desks, pictures attached to walls showing families and friends light years away. Choi documented everything with her scanner while Han took notes, his hands moving rapidly across his tablet. The medical bay was their first major stop. Park had expected to find remains here, but the beds were empty and carefully prepared. Medical equipment was arranged with precision, instruments cleaned and stored properly. Whoever worked here last had taken time to organize everything. What they did find were records. Thousands of them. Digital files carefully backed up to physical storage crystals, then backed up again to magnetic drives, then printed on archival paper as a final redundancy. Someone had been very determined that this information would survive. Han began reviewing the files while the team continued exploring. What he found made him call Park back within minutes. "Captain, you need to see this. The crew survived the battle. They lived for months after entering the nebula." Park stood beside him, reading the medical logs that scrolled across the display. The entries were methodical and professional, documenting the crew's condition day by day. Chief Medical Officer Kim Soo-jin had maintained records until 2 days before the final entry, when someone else's handwriting took over, noting that Dr. Kim had passed peacefully in her sleep. The logs told a story of gradual decline. The nebula's radiation penetrated even the Eternal Vigil's heavy shielding. It killed slowly, giving the crew time to think, time to decide what to do with their remaining days. "They knew they were dying," Choi said, reading over Park's shoulder, "but they kept working. Look at the duty rosters. Every single person maintained their station until they physically could not continue." The team moved on to the engineering section, and here they found the heart of the mystery. The main reactor was cold, shut down properly with all safety protocols observed. But the auxiliary power systems were still running, barely, drawing energy from fuel cells that should have expired decades ago. Someone had modified the power distribution network with remarkable ingenuity. Non-essential systems were completely disconnected. Life support was disabled. Weapons were offline. But 3 systems still received power: emergency lighting, environmental preservation in key areas, and something deep in the computer core. Choi traced the power flow with growing admiration. "This is brilliant engineering. They cannibalized half the ship's systems to keep these 3 functions running. Whoever designed this understood power management better than anyone I have ever studied under." The engineering logs identified the designer, Commander Yoon Da-eun, Chief Science Officer. Her entries were technical and precise, detailing every modification, but personal notes appeared in the margins, written in a different style, more emotional. "We cannot go home, but we can send something home. Our knowledge, our experience, our warning about this region of space. We will make our death mean something beyond the battle already won." The trail led them down through the ship's levels, into the sections where massive computer systems processed the data that kept a supercarrier fighting. And there, in a chamber that should have been as cold and dark as the rest of the ship, they found lights. The AI core was active. Banks of processing units hummed quietly, their cooling systems working on minimal power. Holographic displays flickered with data streams. And in the center of it all, a single interface terminal glowed with soft blue light. Park approached it carefully. His security team took positions around the room, though what threat they expected to find in this tomb, he could not say. He reached out and touched the activation panel. The terminal chimed, a pleasant sound in the silence. Text appeared on the screen in Korean, then cycled through 11 other languages of the Council species. Astra Core Online, Autonomous Strategic Tactical Research Archive, awaiting command authorization. Park stared at the screen. Astra was the Eternal Vigil's artificial intelligence designed to coordinate the ship's combat systems and analyze tactical data. It should have shut down when the reactor went cold. Instead, it had been running for 87 years on emergency power, maintained by modifications so clever that they had kept it alive when nothing else survived. He entered his command authorization codes, transmitted from Council Station. The screen flickered, processing. Authorization accepted. Captain Park Jae-woo, United Human Naval Service. Welcome aboard the Eternal Vigil. There was a pause, and then another line appeared. Welcome home. Park felt something catch in his throat. Astra, what is your status? All primary functions offline. Archive functions maintained. Awaiting data transfer. What data? The displays around the room came alive. Streams of information filled every screen. Tactical analyses, technical specifications, research files, personnel records, and something else, something that made Park step closer to read more carefully. Astra, what am I looking at? The AI's response was simple, but the words carried weight that made the entire boarding team fall silent. The final work of the Eternal Vigil. Captain Lee Hyun-woo's last order. Ensure our death means something. Project duration, 263 days. Status, complete. Awaiting transmission to Galactic Council. Han moved to another terminal, his fingers flying across the interface. His eyes widened as he understood what he was seeing. Captain, this is everything. Every battle record from the Harbinger War. Every tactical lesson. Every technical analysis. But there is more. Social integration protocols, psychological support frameworks, educational materials about cross-species cooperation. They created a complete guide for galactic unity. Choi pulled up another file tree. Engineering specifications for combined species vessels, techniques for integrating different technologies, maintenance procedures that account for different species' strengths. This is decades of research compiled in months. Park looked around the room at the incredible gift the crew had left behind. 12,000 people, dying slowly in the darkness, had spent their final days building something to help the galaxy that would survive without them. Astra, he said quietly. Did they complete this work before they died? Affirmative. Final entry, logged 263 days after entering Nebula. Crew casualties, 100%. Captain Lee's final message recorded. Shall I play it? Park nodded, unable to speak. The speakers crackled, and a voice emerged from 87 years in the past. It was tired but calm, with the accent of soul. This is Captain Lee Hyun-woo of the UHNS Eternal Vigil. If you are hearing this, our work survived. Astra, transfer everything to whoever finds us. They earned it. The galaxy earned it. We are going to sleep now. It has been an honor to serve. The recording ended. In the silence that followed, Captain Park stood among his team and realized they were crying. All of them. For people they had never met, who had died before some of them were born, who had refused to let death be meaningless. Astra's displays painted the command center in shifting colors as the AI began sharing its records. Captain Park Ji-woo sat at what had been Captain Lee's station, watching as 87 years of waiting unfolded before him. The artificial intelligence had one purpose remaining, to deliver the crew's final gift. Beginning historical playback, Astra announced. Day 1 after entering the Void Nebula. The screen showed Captain Lee Hyun-woo standing in this same command center, his uniform torn and burned from the battle. Behind him, crew members worked at damaged stations, their faces exhausted but focused. Lee was 46 years old in the recording, with gray at his temples and burn scars on his hands. Status report, Lee said to someone off-screen. Commander Yoon Da-yoon's voice responded, Quantum drives are gone. The Harbinger weapon fused the core components. Conventional engines are functional, but insufficient to escape the nebula's gravity well. Communication systems are damaged beyond repair. The nebula's radiation is blocking everything anyway. Life support is stable for now. We have 8 months of supplies if we ration carefully." Lee nodded slowly. "So we cannot leave, and no one can hear us. But we are alive and we have time. Recommendations?" There was silence on the recording. Then Yoon spoke again, and her voice was steady. "We use the time, Captain. We document everything we learned in this war. We survived more Harbinger encounters than any other ship. We have data nobody else has. If we are going to die here, we make certain our experience survives." Lee looked directly at the camera, and Park felt as though the dead captain was speaking to him personally. "Agreed. All departments, new mission parameters. We survive to protect others. That mission continues. Science teams begin compiling combat data. Engineering teams document all Harbinger technology we encountered. Medical teams analyze the biological samples we collected. We are going to build something that helps the next generation fight smarter." The recording jumped forward. Day 15. The crew had organized into research teams. Scientists analyzed Harbinger weapons and shield technology. Engineers documented the modifications they had made during desperate battles. Medical officers studied the few Harbinger biological samples they had recovered, searching for weaknesses. But they did more. They looked beyond the immediate threat. Commander Yoon appeared in another recording, standing in front of a whiteboard covered in diagrams. Around her, officers from different departments listened intently. "The Harbingers nearly won because we fought separately," Yoon said. "Humanity, the Viridians, the Catharians, we all maintained separate fleets with different tactics and incompatible equipment. We won because we finally learned to cooperate, but it took a catastrophe to force us together. What happens when the next threat appears? Do we forget these lessons?" A young lieutenant raised his hand. "Ma'am, are you suggesting we design integration protocols? Ways to help different species work together permanently?" Yoon smiled. "Exactly. We have representatives from 4 species aboard this ship. We have lived together, fought together, and now we will die together. We know what works and what doesn't. Let us write it down." The playback showed weeks of work. Crew members from different species sat together in the mess hall, discussing their experiences. A human engineer explained how Catharian spatial mathematics had saved his team during a critical repair. A Viridian tactical officer described learning human improvisation techniques. They recorded everything, not just the technical details, but the personal insights about how to build trust across species lines. Park watched as the crew transformed their tragedy into purpose. Day 30, Day 60, Day 90. The radiation was affecting them now. Medical logs showed increasing fatigue, cellular damage, systemic failures. But the work continued. Dr. Kim Soo-jin appeared in a recording from Day 112. She looked thin and tired, but her voice remained professional. "We are documenting comprehensive medical data about radiation exposure in multi-species crews. This information could save lives in future deep space operations. Every day we survive, we gather more data. Every symptom we experience, we record. Our bodies are failing, but the knowledge we generate will help others survive similar situations." Lieutenant Choi Seo-yeon paused the playback. They turned themselves into research subjects. They documented their own deaths for scientific value. Dr. Han Jae-sung was reading through files on another terminal. "It is more than that. Look at this section. Psychological support protocols for mixed species crews. They analyzed their own interactions, identified what helped them maintain morale, what caused friction between species, how they resolved conflicts. This is practical wisdom earned through living it." The playback resumed. Day 147. Captain Lee called a ship-wide meeting. The crew gathered in the main hangar bay, and Park could see how much they had declined. Some crew members needed assistance to walk. Others sat on the deck, too weak to stand. But they came. Lee stood on a cargo container so everyone could see him. His voice was hoarse but clear through the hangar's speakers. "We have been here almost 5 months. We have compiled the most comprehensive tactical database in galactic history. We have designed integration frameworks that could prevent future wars. We have documented technologies and techniques that will save countless lives. But I want to talk about something more important." He paused, looking across the faces of his crew. "Every one of you could have spent these months in despair. You could have given up. Instead, you worked. You maintained discipline. You supported each other. Some of you are humans who spent your whole lives hearing that other species could not be trusted. Some of you are Viridians who were taught that humans were barbaric. Some of you are Catharians who learned that both humans and Viridians were dangerous. But here in this place you became family." Lee's voice grew stronger. "That is what I want the galaxy to know. Not just our data, not just our research, but this truth. When beings choose to see each other as people rather than aliens, incredible things become possible. We are dying together, but we have lived together first. We have proven that cooperation is not just possible, it is our greatest strength." The recording showed the crew standing despite their weakness, their hands clasped together, human hands, Viridian claws, Catharian digits, all linked. They stood in silence, and that silence spoke louder than words. The playback moved faster now, summarizing the final months. The crew continued working even as their numbers dwindled. When engineers became too weak to maintain systems, they trained others. When scientists could no longer analyze data, they organized their notes for whoever would follow. When the captain himself grew too ill to command, Commander Yoon took over and continued the mission. Day 231, only 18 crew members remained. They gathered in the command center, maintaining the vital systems by sheer determination. Day 245, 6 crew members. They took turns sleeping, ensuring someone was always monitoring Astra's progress. Day 261. Commander Yoon made the final recording. She sat alone in the command center, her breathing labored. The Viridian science officer had died that morning. The Catharian navigator passed during the evening. Yoon was the last. "This is Commander Yoon, acting captain of the Eternal Vigil. All crew members have passed. I will be joining them soon. Astra, confirm all data packages are complete and secured." Astra's voice responded on the recording. "Confirmed, Commander. All research compiled, all databases organized, archive complete. Thank you for your work." Yoon smiled. "Good. Astra, I have a final request. Keep running. Wait for someone to find this ship. It might be 10 years. It might be 100. But someone will come eventually. When they do, give them everything. Make certain they know it was worth it." "I will wait as long as necessary, Commander. I promise." Yoon stood slowly, painfully. She walked to the viewport and looked out at the nebula's swirling colors. "We saved 4 billion people. We gave them futures they would not have had. And now we are giving the galaxy the tools to save itself. I think that is enough." She returned to the captain's chair and sat down carefully. "Astra, begin final archive protocols. Lock all systems for long-term preservation. Reduce power to absolute minimum. Keep the data alive." "Protocols initiated, Commander." Yoon closed her eyes. Tell them we were honored to serve." The recording ended. Captain Park sat in silence, staring at the blank screen. Around him, his boarding team made no sound. They had just witnessed something sacred, the final moments of people who refused to let death be the end of their contribution. Dr. Han spoke first, his voice rough with emotion. "They spent 263 days building a gift for people they would never meet. They died alone in the darkness, but they made certain their knowledge would light the way for others." Astra's displays flickered. "Captain Park, all archive data is ready for transmission to Galactic Council Station." Commander Yoon's final order was to share everything freely with all species. Do you wish to begin transmission? Park stood. No, Astra. We are not transmitting this remotely. The Eternal Vigil is going home. Every species in the galaxy will receive this gift together, with the honor it deserves. The crew gave us their knowledge. The least we can do is make certain everyone knows what they sacrificed to create it. He activated his communication system. Park to Council Station. Connect me to Ambassador Quan. We are coming home, and we are bringing 12,000 heroes with us. The Eternal Vigil moved through space for the first time in 87 years, towed by Captain Park's fleet like a wounded soldier carried by comrades. Word of its return had spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication. Every species knew, every world watched. Ambassador Quan Minseo stood at the observation deck of Galactic Council Station, watching the approaching vessel through the massive viewport. Behind her, the station's operations center worked at capacity, coordinating the largest gathering of ships in peacetime history. Vessels from every member species had come to witness this moment. Ambassador, the Viridian Supremacy is requesting permission to join the Honor Corridor, her aide said. They are deploying their entire home fleet, all 47 capital ships. Quan nodded absently, her eyes fixed on the scarred hull of the Eternal Vigil. Grant permission. Everyone who wishes to honor the crew should be allowed to participate. The aide hesitated. Ma'am, the Viridians fought a war against humanity before the Harbinger invasion. They killed thousands of our people. Are you certain? That was before, Quan interrupted gently. Before the Eternal Vigil showed them what humanity truly valued. Before Captain Lee and his crew died protecting Viridian colonies along with everyone else. They have earned the right to pay their respects. The ships came from every direction, forming two parallel lines that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Human vessels took positions alongside their former enemies. The Catharian Collective Merchant Fleet, thousands of civilian ships, held station in perfect formation. Even species admitted to the Galactic Council after the Harbinger War sent representatives, young civilizations that owed their existence to a battle fought before they joined the galactic community. Council Speaker Thelnos addressed the assembled fleets through an open broadcast channel. His ancient voice carried the weight of centuries. Today, we welcome home the UHN's Eternal Vigil and honor 12,000 souls who purchased the galaxy's future with their lives. Let every species present understand what we witness. These humans could have fled. They could have saved themselves. Instead, they charged into death to protect beings they had never met, from species some of them had fought in previous wars. This is not merely sacrifice. This is the highest expression of moral courage our galaxy has ever witnessed. The Eternal Vigil entered the Honor Corridor, and something unprecedented occurred. Every warship, from every species, simultaneously lowered their flags. The action was uncoordinated, arising spontaneously from thousands of commanders making the same decision in the same moment. Flags of nations that had been enemies for centuries lowered together in unified tribute. On the bridge of the Viridian flagship Eternal Truth, Fleet Commander Shalkor watched the human ship pass. He was 300 years old and had fought in 7 wars. He had commanded fleets that conquered star systems, but he had never seen anything that moved him like this. Communications, open a channel to all Viridian vessels, he ordered. All ships are to maintain flag position for the duration of the Eternal Vigil's passage. This is not just a human ship. This is a monument to what we should all aspire to become. His communication officer, a young officer who barely remembered the Harbinger War, looked at him with surprise. Sir, we have never lowered our flags for another species. Shalkor's voice was soft. We have never had reason to before. The crew of that ship died protecting my grandchildren's colony. I was there on the ground watching the sky. We saw the Eternal Vigil burning in orbit, saw it firing even as it came apart. We knew what those humans were buying with their lives. Every hour they fought was another shuttle of children evacuated. Every minute was more families saved. They knew they would die. They did it anyway. Inside Council Station, preparations for the memorial ceremony reached their conclusion. The Grand Chamber had been transformed. Holographic displays showed the Eternal Vigil's final battle from multiple perspectives. Detailed accounts of the crew's work during their final months filled every available surface. But the centerpiece was simpler: 12,000 lights, one for each crew member, arranged in the shape of the ship they had served. Ambassador Quan reviewed the ceremony protocols for the 5th time, ensuring every detail was perfect. Representatives from all 12 council species would speak. Families of the crew would be honored. The compiled database would be formally presented to the galaxy as the crew's final gift. But what occupied her thoughts was more personal. Among those 12,000 names was her grandfather. She had requested permission to see his final messages, the ones he recorded for his family during those last months. Astra had preserved everything. She sat alone in a small viewing room and activated the file. Her grandfather's face appeared on the screen, younger than she had ever known him, but with the same gentle expression she remembered from photographs. "Hello, my family. If you are watching this, it means we did not make it home. I wish I could see you again, hold my wife, meet my grandchildren that I will never know. But I have work to do here, and it is important work." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I want you to understand why we are doing this. We could spend these months feeling sorry for ourselves. We could give up, but that would dishonor the people we saved. 4 billion beings are alive because we held the line. That number is hard to understand, but think of it this way: 4 billion individuals who will wake up tomorrow, who will see their families, who will have futures. We gave them that gift." His expression became more serious. "But we want to give more. We are documenting everything we learned so that future crews will fight smarter. We are designing systems so that different species can work together better. We are building something that will help the galaxy long after we are gone. When I think of my granddaughter, and I believe my daughter will have a daughter, I hope she grows up in a galaxy that learned from our sacrifice. I hope she lives in a time when species help each other not because they have to, but because they want to." Tears ran down Quan's face as she listened to his words. He had been right. She was his granddaughter. She had grown up in the galaxy he helped build, and it was better because of what he and his crewmates had done. The Eternal Vigil docked at Council Station 3 hours later. The umbilical connections engaged with the care usually reserved for priceless artifacts, because that was what the ship had become: a priceless artifact that contained both the remains of heroes and the knowledge they died creating. The formal ceremony began at sunset, timed to match Earth's rotation so that the crew's homeworld would be properly honored. The Grand Chamber filled with dignitaries, but also with ordinary people, merchants, students, workers, who had come to witness history. Council Speaker Thelnos opened the proceedings. "We gather to receive a gift, purchased with the lives of people who believed that knowledge and cooperation were worth dying for. The Eternal Vigil's crew spent their final days not in despair, but in service. They transformed their tragedy into wisdom. They turned their death into life for others." One by one, representatives from each species spoke. The Catharian representative, a merchant captain named Thelris, stepped forward with his ship's manifest in his hands. "My grandfather commanded a merchant vessel during the Harbinger War. The Eternal Vigil's sacrifice bought time for his ship to escape. Because of that, my family exists. I exist. When I was young, my grandfather told me, 'Remember the humans who died so you could live. Remember that they did not know your name, did not know your family, did not know anything about you except that you needed help. Remember that they helped anyway. I have remembered. We have all remembered. The Viridian representative, Fleet Commander Shalakor himself, spoke next. His voice was thick with emotion rare for his ancient species. The Viridian supremacy fought humanity for decades. We believed ourselves superior, our culture more advanced, our military stronger. The Harbingers taught us we were wrong about superiority. The Eternal Vigil taught us we were wrong about humanity. When Captain Lee's ship positioned itself between the Harbinger mothership and our colonies, he did not ask if we deserved to be saved. He did not demand payment. He did not negotiate terms. He simply acted because protecting the helpless was what humans did. We have learned from their example. Our fleets now serve not just Viridian interests, but galactic interests. We learned that from humans who died teaching us. One by one, the testimonials continued. Species who had been enemies before the war spoke of reconciliation inspired by human sacrifice. Young civilizations described how the Eternal Vigil's database helped them integrate into galactic society. Scientists detailed how the crew's research had advanced multiple fields of study. Finally, Ambassador Quan stepped forward to present the formal archive to the Council. But she did not speak immediately. She looked across the assembled representatives, seeing the genuine emotion on faces from a dozen different species. My grandfather served on the Eternal Vigil, she said quietly. He was not a captain or a commander. He was a junior engineer who maintained the reactors. He was nobody special, just a man doing his job. But he and 11,999 other ordinary people created something extraordinary. They showed us that we are stronger together than apart. She activated the holographic display. An Astra's compiled database materialized in the air above the chamber, a glowing representation of 263 days of work, thousands of hours of research, millions of data points collected by dying people determined to help those who would survive them. This is their gift to us. This is why they maintained discipline while dying. This is why they worked until they had nothing left. Because they believed that we were worth saving, and they believed that we could build something better together. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. Let us prove them right. The chamber fell silent. Then slowly, every representative stood. Not in applause, not in celebration, but in solemn acknowledgement of a debt that could never be repaid, only honored through action. Outside the station, thousands of ships remained in position. Flags lowered, holding vigil for heroes who had held the line when it mattered most. And somewhere among those lights, the spirit of the Eternal Vigil and its 12,000 crew members rested, knowing their watch had finally ended. 3 days after the memorial ceremony, Captain Park Ji-woo sat alone in the Eternal Vigil's command center, reading through the final files Astra had preserved. Most of the archive had been transferred to the Galactic Council, but personal records remained on the ship. These were the private thoughts of 12,000 people facing death, and Park felt they deserved respect and privacy. He was about to finish when Astra spoke unexpectedly. Captain Park, there is one more file. It is marked with special access restrictions. Captain Lee designated it for release only under specific conditions. Park sat up straighter. What conditions? The file can only be opened if the following criteria are met. First, the Eternal Vigil must return to civilized space. Second, the archive must be accepted by the Galactic Council. Third, all member species must participate in a unified memorial. All conditions have now been satisfied. Park felt his pulse quicken. What is the file? Captain Lee titled it, If Hope Survives. Shall I display it? Yes. The screen flickered, and Captain Lee's face appeared once more. But this recording was different from the others. Lee was not exhausted or dying. This had been recorded early, perhaps during the first days in the nebula. His expression was thoughtful, almost peaceful. If you are watching this, something remarkable has happened. The galaxy has come together to honor our sacrifice. Different species have worked together to retrieve our ship. That means the future we hoped for is becoming real. That means you have already proven that cooperation is possible. Lee leaned forward, his eyes intense. But I have one more request, one final mission, if you will accept it. My crew and I are still aboard this ship. We died here, and our remains are somewhere in these corridors. We documented our deaths, but we did not have the strength to properly honor our own fallen. We could not give ourselves the burial we deserved. Park realized what Lee was asking before the recording continued. I know what I am requesting. The Void Nebula is dangerous. Returning there to recover our bodies will be difficult and expensive. No single species has the technology to navigate those dangers safely. It would require multiple species working together, combining their unique capabilities into something greater than any one nation could achieve. Lee smiled slightly. Do you see what I am doing? I am asking you to prove that the cooperation we died for is real. I am asking you to show that different species can work together on something difficult, something that has no strategic value, something done purely because it is the right thing to do. The recording paused while Lee gathered his thoughts. If you cannot do this, I understand. We made our peace with dying here. But if you can, if the galaxy has truly learned to work together, then bringing us home would prove that our sacrifice achieved its purpose. It would show that we did not die in vain. The recording ended with coordinates and detailed navigational data. Lee's crew had spent their final weeks mapping safe routes through the nebula, creating pathways that would allow recovery operations, but only if multiple species pooled their technologies and expertise. Park sat in silence for a long moment, then activated his communication system. Park to Ambassador Quan. We need to call an emergency council session. Captain Lee left us one final message, and I think you will want to hear it. The council chamber filled quickly. Park played Lee's recording for the assembled representatives, and the reaction was immediate. The Viridian representative stood without waiting to be recognized. My species has shield technology that can withstand the nebula's radiation. We will contribute our fleet. The Catharian representative followed. Our quantum navigation systems can chart safe paths through spatial anomalies. We commit our expertise. One by one, each species offered their capabilities. Humans provided structural engineering and life support systems. The Talgorians contributed their advanced scanning technology. The Zelnathi offered medical preservation techniques. Every species had something unique to contribute, and every species volunteered without hesitation. Council Speaker Thelnos raised his hand for silence. We are unanimous, then. The Eternal Vigil recovery operation will be the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. We will bring them home. Over the next 8 months, 12 species worked together to build a vessel unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The recovery ship. Unity's Promise incorporated technologies from every participating species. Viridian shield generators wrapped in Catharian quantum field stabilizers, powered by human fusion reactors, guided by Talgorian sensors. The ship was a physical manifestation of cooperation, proof that what the Eternal Vigil's crew died for was possible. Ambassador Quan walked through the Unity's Promise during its final inspection, marveling at the integration of so many different technologies. Engineers from different species worked side by side, solving problems together, teaching each other. She thought about her grandfather and wondered if he had imagined something like this when he spent his final days documenting cooperation protocols. The mission to the Void Nebula took 3 weeks. The Unity's Promise followed Captain Lee's carefully mapped routes, its combined technologies allowing it to navigate dangers that would have destroyed any single species vessel. The cooperation was not just symbolic, it was essential. Every species' contribution was necessary for success. They found the crew where the logs predicted, in the ship's emergency shelter, the most protected section of the vessel. The bodies had been arranged with care. Each person lay in their bunk, hands folded, personal effects organized beside them. Even in death, they had taken care of each other. The recovery team worked with reverence. Each crew member was documented, their personal belongings carefully preserved. Dr. Han Jae-sung, who had accompanied the mission, supervised the process with the attention he would give to sacred artifacts. They maintained dignity until the end, he said quietly. Even when they were dying, they organized everything so we would know who they were, what they accomplished, what they meant to their families. The return journey took 4 weeks. The Unity's promise carried 12,000 souls home, and news of its approach spread across the galaxy. Every world sent messages, every station broadcast remembrance. Earth prepared for the largest funeral in human history. But the Galactic Council had other plans. The 12 species voted unanimously. The Eternal Vigil's crew would be honored by everyone, not just humanity. Burial ceremonies would be held on Earth, but every species would participate according to their traditions. The ceremonies took place in Seoul, in the shadow of the interstellar cemetery, where humanity had honored its war dead for 2 centuries. But this was different. This was unprecedented. The Viridians, who cremated their dead in solar plasma, donated a star. A small red dwarf, stable and long-lived, was officially designated Vigil's Light. It would burn for trillions of years, a permanent memorial to the crew. The Catharians, whose culture valued song above all else, composed a mourning hymn. It was added to their sacred liturgy, to be sung at every Catharian funeral for all time. The words spoke of sacrifice and honor, translated into 87 languages so every species could understand. The Talgorians created living monuments, genetically engineered trees that would grow on every council world. Their leaves containing biological markers that told the story of the Eternal Vigil in a language written in DNA itself. Every species offered something permanent, something that would ensure the crew was remembered not for years or decades, but for as long as their civilizations endured. The burial itself was conducted with military precision. 12,000 graves arranged in the pattern of the Eternal Vigil's crew assignments, each grave marked with the person's name, rank, species, and a single line. Held the line, saved the galaxy. Ambassador Kwan stood before her grandfather's grave, placing a hand on the marker. Around her, families from all 12 species paid their respects. Human families stood beside Viridian clans. Catharian merchants bowed beside Talgorian scholars. The cemetery was a living demonstration of the unity the crew had died to create. Captain Park gave the final address. He stood on a platform where he could see the entire cemetery, 12,000 graves spreading in neat rows across the hillside. These people did not save the galaxy just by fighting, he said. They saved it by showing us that we are stronger together than apart. They did not just die for us, they lived for us. Every day they survived in that nebula, they worked to help people they would never meet. They maintained hope when they had every reason for despair. They chose to make their death mean something. He paused, looking across the assembled crowd. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy had come to witness this moment. The frameworks they designed are now used on every council vessel. The integration protocols they created allow our species to work together more effectively than ever before. The educational materials they compiled are taught to children on hundreds of worlds. But more than that, they changed how we see each other. When different species work together now, we remember the Eternal Vigil. We remember that cooperation is not just possible, it is our greatest strength. The ceremony concluded with a tradition adapted from human military funerals, a final salute from the honor guard. But the guard was not just human, It included representatives from all 12 species, standing together, saluting together, honoring together. 5 years later, the Eternal Vigil Memorial Station opened in orbit around Earth. The Supercarrier itself was preserved exactly as it was found, its corridors maintained, its history protected. Visitors could walk through the command center where Captain Lee made his final decision. They could see the medical bay where Dr. Kim documented her own death. They could stand in the engineering section where Commander Yoon designed the systems that kept hope alive. The memorial received millions of visitors every year. School groups from across the galaxy learned about sacrifice and cooperation. Military academies studied the tactical decisions. Engineers analyzed the improvised systems. Historians documented every detail. But what touched people most was the personal, the photos on the walls, the books left on desks, the small reminders that these were ordinary people who did extraordinary things. A young Viridian student stood before the holographic display showing Captain Lee's final speech to his crew. She was part of a class visiting from a colony world that the Eternal Vigil had helped save. Her teacher stood beside her, watching her process what she was seeing. "Teacher," the student asked, "why did they keep working when they knew they would die?" The teacher thought carefully before answering. "Because they understood something important. They understood that our lives have meaning not just in what we take from the universe, but in what we give to it. They could not save themselves, but they could save the future. They chose to make their last breath matter." The student nodded slowly, watching the recording of humans and Viridians and Catharians working together in the face of death. "I think I understand. They did not want to be remembered as victims. They wanted to be remembered as builders." "Yes," the teacher said. "Exactly." Outside the memorial station, flags from 12 species flew at equal height, representing the unity the Eternal Vigil had helped create. But once per year, on the anniversary of the ship's return, every species lowered their flag in synchronized remembrance. For one day, the entire galaxy paused to honor sacrifice, to remember courage, and to renew their commitment to the cooperation that 12,000 souls had purchased with their lives. And in the computer core, Astra maintained its eternal watch, processing new data, updating records, ensuring that the story of the Eternal Vigil would never be forgotten. Its final log entry, broadcast across the galaxy each year, contained the words Commander Yoon had requested. The crew of the UHNS Eternal Vigil maintained the watch until relieved. Captain Lee's final order: make our death mean something. Mission accomplished. Watch concluded. Rest well, Vigil. The galaxy remembers. V.